Hello, and welcome to another episode of K-TEIN. It has been a while, folks, but I am back and I'm trying to get some things done properly. But before we go further, as you can see on the screen, we are taking a look at Phantom Breaker Omnia. If any of you people have seen any of the previous episode, you may have heard the name Phantom Breaker come up here or there. Reason why, because this is basically my most favorite fighting game of all time. This is the fighting game that pretty much I feel is the well, I want to say pinnacle of fighting games. I won't say pinnacle, but it's just one of my very loved and beloved favorite. And just yesterday, which is let's see, what is the date? Just October 15th, Phantom Breaker Omnia was announced. A while ago, the 5PB Twitter and Magic's Twitter were all saying stuff about Phantom Breaker, so we're wondering if something was happening, and apparently it did happen. They announced, in collaboration with Rocket Panda game publisher, this is their very first published game, Phantom Breaker Omnia will be being. Oh wow, excuse me. Phantom Breaker Omnia will be delivered to us on 2021, available for not only the Xbox One, not only the PS4, not even only the Nintendo Switch, but also PC. And this is what me and many of the people in the Phantom Breaker Discord have been wanting. We've just been wanting to have Phantom Breaker available on the PC. I mean, granted, we wanted even more stuff, but at the bare minimum, I at least just wanted Phantom Breaker Extra available for the PC, and I finally got that wish. But not only that, they did announce how this game will have dual audio, aka as in it's going to have English dubbing, which is something I'm very much looking forward to because I actually am a big proprietor of English dub and more fighting games. It allows us to get even more connected to these characters, and they're even going to translate the game's original story. So this is a big deal, very much. I actually kind of find it I actually kind of find it ironic how Phantom Breaker is also once again another debut game for a new publisher, in a sense, because the history of Phantom Breaker, if you can look into it yourself, in fact, there are a few people who have looked into it. I believe Gaming Hell. I may try to put a link in the description, but also Gaming 101 did an article about the history of the studio that made Phantom Breaker, which is called Magis. They worked along with Five Bases in Power and usually just made a lot of visual novels for the first few couple of years. That's how they got basically more popular and prolific. But when Five Bases in Power wanted to publish their own independent game without working on visual novels that were licensed from other publishers or groups or whatever they do, however they get their publishing. Phantom Breaker was their very first independent in-house game that they made, which is why the game is even called Phantom Breaker because the company 5PB, aka Five Bases of Power, their name Phantom Breaker, Bases of Power, kind of coincide with each other in a sense. So yeah, so now we have this new publisher, Rocket Panda Games, which makes and apparently Phantom Breaker is their very first game that they're choosing to bring over to the West or publish in general. Because I have no idea if they have a different publisher in Japan. I'm gonna assume that probably they're the same. And yeah, so once again, Phantom Breaker almost repeating its history of being a first published fighting game for these publishers. So one, thank you Rocket Panda Games for working with Magis to bring us Phantom Breaker Omnia because, as I said, I've been in love with this game ever since I was introduced to it back and way back in I think around maybe 2007. I think maybe 2011. I'm not really sure. I'll have to double check you on that. But since I do have you here, why don't we go ahead and take a look at the trailer? Here we are. Let's get to it. Sorry about that. Ooh, let me stop this for a second. Make sure my audio is working properly. And there you have it. That was the trailer for Phantom Breaker, and we're not gonna do that again. So yeah, there you have it. There's the trailer to Phantom Breaker Extra. That's a extra. Yeah. No, no, this is a Wikipedia page. So yeah, published by Rocket Panda Games, we're going to be getting Phantom Breaker Omnia. And let's see, some of the things they have announced. Well, they say 20 character rosters, including Kirisu Mikasa and where's Remy? Like Kirisu Mikasa from Stain Gate and brand new characters. Yeah, they definitely make sure to highlight Kirisu Mikasa because apparently that's a very popular character from Stein Gates. I never really quite understood why she was so crazy popular, but people love her. The amount of people who comment on the video saying, "Oh, Kirisu's in here, I'm going to get it," and I'm here like, "Who is this character? Why do we care?" But sure, whatever. If that's what gets people into the game, more power to them. Now, here's where I want to actually point out something I've referenced. The next thing says, choose from 3 different fighting styles, which is quick, hard, and Omnia. Now, if you ever played the original Phantom Breaker Extra back in, I think, 2013 for the PS3 and Xbox 360, Phantom Breaker Extra had introduced a third style called Extra Style. Now, considering that they're calling this now Omnia and doesn't say Extra, I'm basically left with the assumption that Phantom Breaker Omnia is probably is just Phantom Breaker Extra, but repolished, like how Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which is later called Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Turbo, the one that allows you to choose different styles. Essentially, this really isn't a brand new Phantom Breaker, but an update, which they did comment saying that. But to more elaborate, yeah, update. They did comment saying they're going to be retooled and rebalanced. The ability to pull off amazing combo specials have never been easier, as Phantom Breaker Omnia fight system has been overhauled, rebalanced. Now, for me personally, I am taking that with a grain of salt because there is actually at least one match video that we do see of the game, and outside of the UI changes, and maybe I think the stages are much larger, or rather you do have much more screen space to work with. The game looks very much identical to Phantom Breaker Extra, outside of the UI change and possibly the screen being different. Now, they say they're going to have dual language audio, which I've already commented about how they're going to have English dubbing, something I'm looking forward to. I think it's nice and fine. And then they're going to have remix soundtrack. Now, I already do like Phantom Breaker soundtrack. I don't know if I can say I love it. I mean, I will say that I do love it, but I'm not sure if it's Stockholm Syndrome because of how much I just played the game and then I just grew to love it because I just listened to it so much that now I do love it. Overall, it's usually not the first music I try to listen to when I listen to a lot of my game soundtrack. I do it. I do like it, but I do feel like part of it is also due to Stockholm Syndrome. With that said, I will be interested in hearing some remixes soundtrack, since in Phantom Breaker Extra they gave us different stages but not different soundtracks. We only got 4 different soundtracks when they introduced the new characters, and yeah, that's about it, just 4 different soundtracks. So I'll be interested to hear the new soundtrack. I mean, we did hear the very first one, which is the new opening, which I think is called Contradiction, from the artist name. Unfortunately, it escapes me now. But I did like that new soundtrack. I was definitely listening to it all throughout at work. Well, listening through the trailer, not actually listening through a single or anything. But yeah. And now, here's the part that majority of the old Phantom Breaker fans were diehard for. I technically didn't care for this, but I'm also glad that we do have it. So, players can immerse themselves with the stories from both Phantom Breaker and Phantom Breaker Extra. See, I kind of find it ironic how this features highlights that Phantom Breaker Extra existed, yet, like I said, when you look at the styles, they call it Omnia, no longer call it Extra. So it's kind of a interesting take on, I guess, their marketing. But yeah, they are going to have the old game story mode, which none of us ever got to really experience, at least proper, because in Japanese. So now we can actually get more of an idea of what the story is going to be. Now, there is actually an in-between game of Phantom Breaker and Phantom Breaker Extra called Phantom Breaker Battleground, which I have ill feelings towards Phantom Breaker Battleground, but I'm not going to get into that today. Well, actually, maybe I will get into it today since this is my video, K-TEIN. So, and that is telling everything in nuance. That's what the time it means. So, yeah, I'll go ahead and go into that. So, there is a spin-off game, and it is this game. It is this game. A game that, let's see. There we go. Phantom Breaker Battleground. A game that I have a lot of mixed feelings for, and by mixed, I really mean hatred towards it, to be honest. Now, you may be asking, why do I hate this game? If it's Phantom Breaker, I love Phantom Breaker. Well, one of the reasons why I hate it is because when Phantom Breaker even debuted it back in, I'm going to assume 2011, just for the sake of keep going and not stopping, basically, many people saw the game and went like, oh, Phantom Breaker, this is nothing special, this is a trash, horrible, whatever, horrible game on all fronts. They were saying that the game plays terrible, the game looks terrible, it's not anything amazing, and whatnot. That's what they feel. They didn't even highlight the music, even though every other people who do know about it say they love the music for some reason. But I digress. Either way, they say Phantom Breaker was more or less trash. They think it wasn't good. So the beat 'em up came out, maybe a year or two so afterwards, and everybody was praising how this is one of the best games in the world and whatnot. Now I got my hands on this game initially with optimism, because initially I was like, oh, I can get more Phantom Breaker in a beat 'em up format and maybe get some more story. Yeah, great. But after I got it and got to play experience the game, I hated this game because one, it just rips the fighting game's mechanic and put it in a beat 'em up setting, but more cut up in pieces. Not only that, the beat 'em up aspect is not, in my opinion, actually great. The reason why I say that is because basically, because they just ripped the fighting game mechanics but cut portion of it out, a lot of things that are really strong in the fighting game side, such as, let's say, air throws, because in Phantom Breaker they do introduce air throws, and in Phantom Breaker air throws cannot be tech grabbed. In other words, they can't be broken. But they brought that over to Extra, and in this game, basically you can air throw your enemies to oblivion. So basically, you can do it infinite on bosses, player characters, and nukes. And that's just only the tip of the iceberg. There are other many mechanics in there that just allows you to basically just breeze through the game. And personally for me, I'm like, well, this isn't really well thought out design, because yes, most of the time beat 'em up is about you just being a very overpowered character who beats up mobs that comes around, but usually you at least still presented some form of a challenge. Sometimes even platforming, sometimes traps and whatnot. At least there's still some challenge. There's no challenge in Phantom Breaker Battleground because one, majority of the enemies just do one thing. They just try to walk up to you and try to attack you. They only guard upwards but never low, because your character can attack low or high, but because they never designed the enemies to for some reason block low, you can just low block them. So them guarding doesn't basically means anything, because you can always open up with this low attacking. So basically, the game just not really well designed on paying for a beat 'em up, because it just takes a lot of broken mechanics to let you go through the mob. But everybody say, "Oh, this is the greatest thing in the world." They're saying Phantom Breaker Background is so much better than the fighter, and I'm like, it technically is just a fighter, but in a beat 'em up setting with even half of some of the fighter mechanics. Because another reason why I do hate Battleground is Battlegrounds basically only makes you play technically in quick style, while in Phantom Breaker, the fighter, you had two styles before they introduced Extra, and which came later. You had hard and quick. You're only given quick style to play with. You're just only given quick style to play with. That's it. So the mechanics of quick style are present, but nothing available for hard outside of your overdrive giving you armor, which does appear in hard, and a counterburst, which is another unlockable. Which that's my next issue. All the interesting mechanics of Phantom Breaker are locked behind a repetitive grinding that's not really, I would say, intuitive. One part because, like I say, Guardian Heroes, because this game is compared to Guardian Heroes because both of them run on a playing system. This is not like beat 'em ups like Scott Pilgrim's or Turtles in Time, where you go up and down. You have to have a playing system like Guardian Heroes or Code of Princess. And in Phantom Breaker Battleground, you're playing. Actually, where was I going with this? I can't remember anymore. I'm going to wrap this up just so we can keep it going. Either way, I didn't like how Battleground basically just neutered the fighting game aspect to just a beat 'em up that's not even really well thought out, and you just run through the game. And maybe that's what people just like, but I get that from best friends from Scott Pilgrim, which still challenges me. I get Fight and Rage, which still has fighting game elements that still requires you to master mechanics, while Phantom Breaker, you just go through the mob. Regardless, everybody said they love Phantom Breaker Battleground, but hate the fighter, and I'm like, how, when they're almost exactly alike? They're almost exactly alike. And again, I could go into a bunch of issues why I have my issue with Battleground, but I'm going to leave it at that for now. Back to what I really do care about, which is actually, what did I do to the place? Oh well, I lost it. So you know what? I will go on to this. So because of Phantom Breaker Omnia being announced, I got motivated to go back to start doing this Wikipedia right here. As you can see, we have this Mizumi Wikipedia, starting to work on it. There's actually I've done well, actually I've done unfortunately most of the work here, with the exception of the mods and admin who helped me with putting the pages and doing the templates. So one, thank you mods and administration for helping me getting started. They definitely gave me the ropes to start learning. So yeah, started working on this Wikipedia. This is just Makoto, but this isn't all that we did for Phantom Breaker. We definitely have the FAQ, which is all right here. I'm going to have to update it due to the new release of now Omnia. I did the actually, yeah, I guess it was right for them to get rid of the hub because we now have a newer game, so we're going to need to go with the new HUD information. And then this is the system mechanics of Phantom Breaker, more or less in depth when it comes to universal mechanics. This could be subject to change once we get our hands on Omnia and find out what is different. Though, as I said, I'm having the impression that Omnia probably really is just Phantom Breaker Extra, because one, the background stages are exactly from Extra. The match video, which I guess let's go and take a look at the match video since we're here right now. This is the match video that they uploaded the same day, so let's take a quick look at this. Alright, so before we go any further, one, things are much more widespread out. Like, characters are usually a little bit more closer, so I am giving the impression that we're working with a little bit more horizontal room in the in any given battle now, which I will imagine improve the zoning game, which is what they did with Arcana Hearts. They gave in Arcana Hearts, they now made the game like full widescreen, which now actually changed certain combos and as well as made more clearance for zoning to be possible. So yeah, there's definitely at least that change I think I'm confident in saying. Now, before we go any further, I can see the UI is drastically different from Phantom Breaker Extra. Actually, you haven't seen Phantom Breaker Extra UI, not UI, HUD. So why don't I actually bring that up real quickly before we continue with this? Let's go with this image. Can I bring this up fully? No, I don't really want to watch a video. Let's not do that. Let's just, show. Maybe this is. Alright, so this is different. As you can see, this is Phantom Breaker Extra's HUD, and it is definitely much more different. I'm gonna say, I guess they went with a more cleaner style, somewhat cleaner, but also try to make it a little bit more poppy because the counterburst gauge is much more vibrant, as we'll go back and see. But if there is one criticism I do have to have, is roughly two things I do have on the criticism of the current UI we have. One, as you can see, this middle gauge right here. Well, if you didn't know, this is a gauge. This is called the tension gauge. This is a mechanic that kind of determines a lot of other mechanics as well as power gain. But overall, this is tension gauge. And right now, I am not a big fan of Omnia's version. Reason being, as you can see, it's just kind of a solid looking bar, while the original one had a little bit of ridges, so you could kind of, if anything, differentiate the different parts. Now let's let the match video go, and you'll see what I mean by how you can't really tell how much you're building up the tension gauge because of it being just this solid bar. But actually, the second criticism I could bring about is, you see this little mark between these character portraits. So initially, when I was watching this the first time, I'm like, okay, I see this game, but I was trying to see, what is retained. And before I saw the article that tells you what was in Phantom Breaker, I almost thought there was no styles in the game because in Phantom Breaker, both the vanilla and extra, they will tell you what style currently your character is. And if we go back to this, as you can see, style, quick, style, quick. So you had that information, and that is imperative in this game because style does change a lot of stuff. So knowing exactly what style you have as well as what your opponent has is very paramount to playing the game, in my opinion. And with Omnia, like I said, I had nothing to really discern that this meant quick style, because if you didn't know, well, now you know this is quick style. This is, I guess, the symbol for quick style. I guess when you look at the O and then a little zigzag, it looks like a Q for quick. Personally, I am not a fan of it because, personally, I'm not a fan just because it's not that easy to parse initially for me. I'm not a fan of it, but I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But yeah, but basically, it just, I don't know. I guess I wish it was just a Q that looks more. I wish it looked more like a Q than this. It is a Q if you stare hard enough and then look at and imagine, is that supposed to be a Q? Then yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a Q, but barely. So I don't like how the styles has these particular graphics. And let's see if I can actually bring it up because they do have it on the web page, which I meant to have here, but your boy's not that clean and clever when it comes to his work. So let's see. Oh dear. Oh, sure, you can steal a thing? I might need to take a look at that. Because actually, I was looking at Event Hubs. I'm not sure if you know, but Event Hub is a website that's dedicated to fighting games. And Event Hubs didn't have anything for Phantom Breaker. But regular news outlets said, hey, Phantom Breaker's coming out. So many outlets commented about how Phantom Breaker is coming out. But Event Hubs, now articles upon articles of other stuff. But I just digress. My apologies. Let's get back to it. Here we go. So right here, let me see if I can bring this up. Maybe. All right, here we go. So apparently this is a new character select screen. Now I admit, I actually do like this character select screen. It is much more enticing, I would say. It looks like you actually are in a fighting game, if you will. The last one wasn't terrible. It was actually fine, but I like how this looks more like it's showing that the game has a lot more to offer, and you're not just seeing two characters on a portrait. Now, as you can see right here, apparently, I guess these are how they're going to use to discern styles, which is these icons. As you can see, that's a Q. So this weird thing that I guess you could think is an H, for hardstyle, like I know it's an H because I know it is hardstyle, but it's like, who really would have recognized that first? It's probably just only a day one problem, but then once you play the game off, you'll recognize the sign. But I'm still not a fan of it. Like, so many different UIs and font, usually not recommended, because last thing you want is information to basically be masked for the player is what something are. And I guess in this purple sign, so thankfully they went the smart route of color coding. Even though the previous game did color coded their style, thankfully they went the route of color coding just so you could, if you can't tell the letters, then you can at least tell by the color coding, because usually the styles do have color coded things associated with it. So yeah, so that was my first two nitpicks about when I was looking at the gameplay video, or at least what I was perceiving. But yeah, let's go ahead and continue watching this match video. Sorry, people. I am doing a poor job of having no Actually, there you go. That's why I actually want to kind of back up for a second. Now, initially looking at this, a lot of things looked very similar to how Phantom Breaker is. I'm actually going to do a match video breakdown. I'm going to do a breakdown of this match video at a later time. I'm just showing this now just for this episode of K-TEIN. I wonder if I'm back following off. Not sure if I did. I did want to show how her back. Let's try backing up a bit more. See, now that back dash right there looks like it has a lot more distance than how it was previously, in my opinion. But I'm actually gonna go back to Phantom Breaker and try to see if I can attempt to cross-reference it. But if it's not, then that just reinforces my argument that I feel Phantom Breaker Omnia is just extra, but the fact that we find. Oh, actually, before we go further, since this match video is already over, look at the tension gauge. Well, in fact, this doesn't do well, so let me back up a bit. Let me see if I can back up. Like, look how the tension gauge is. Look how it looks when it's being filled. Basically, there's nothing really to determine how much more you need before the tension gauge is filled. While in the older games, there was little rigid marks that basically separate how much what did what, so you know how much is filled. The reason why I feel this is important because basically certain actions will contribute to the tension gauge. So with the previous games, you were able to tell what action built what amount of tension, essentially. Like, because you have these little rigid, basically this is considered 10%, then 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, which then tension mode essentially started once it got right here. So you're able to more or less tell how much what build what. Like, for starters, before it took 3 dashes before a block of this more or less was kind of start to fill. Or if you did one nullify attack, I think one block of the tension is automatically filled. So with that, I basically just liked it how this you were able to gauge and read. Was able to read what's going on. Just like how in the burst gauge, they actually add the percentage there, so you can tell how much what builds what when it comes to their burst gauge. Now, I'm not sure if they're doing that because they actually care about giving that information, or is this just a callback to Phantom Breaker's predecessor series, which is Asuka 120. I'm not going to go into Asuka 120 in this video because I plan to I'm going to try to maybe do a history of Phantom Breaker and the developers, which will go into more in-depth look of Asuka 120 degrees. But essentially, before there was Phantom Breaker, there was a predecessor series called Asuka 120. And now with the company that they originally made that called Family Self have debunked it, now they more or less migrated to Magus, which then made Phantom Breaker, which is now essentially the spiritual successor of Asuka 120. And in Asuka 120, the gauge in that bill, which referenced the game's name, Asuka 120 degrees, they used, degrees or percentages to basically measure how much meter you have. So yeah. So considering that they wanted to keep the percentage here so you can read the gauge for your burst gauge, but not really keep the thing that allow you to read the tension gauge, kind of like put me off personally. It's like, yes, it's cleaner, but I think you could have still kept it clean while still making it readable, in my opinion. But yeah, so that's that. I think we did watch the end of this video. Well, I'm going to do a match video analysis later on for this, so we're going to leave this at that. So, In fact, I think we've gone on far enough. So now let me get to the final point that I want to get to about this game right here. I feel with this game coming out and coming out soon, I'm gonna try to become a bit more active with my channel, and I could definitely say I could see myself steering myself towards Phantom Breaker Omnia. But a little bit of another thing, I now got myself a proper router, so now I can go back to playing my multi-blood, which I will try to do more extensively going forward. As far as me streaming, I'm probably actually going to wait till I get a proper mic before I start trying to stream. Because just this morning I was trying to work with OBS and I was still having some challenges with that. So, me streaming, I am not sure. I mean, I will admit this. I will stream Phantom Breaker just for the sake of Phantom Breaker. Because that's, like, even if it's not really done poorly, I want to do it just for the sake of this game that I truly do adore. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, this is going to wrap up this episode of Telling Everything in Nuance. Your boy K-BAS, K-BAS. He is now signing off. Good day.